The Wild West wasn't just about gunfights, cattle drives, and dusty saloons. For the cowboys who roamed the open range in the late 1800s, survival depended on one thing above all else: food. But we're not talking about juicy steaks or hot coffee from a cozy kitchen. We're talking about some of the roughest, strangest, and most surprising meals you can imagine. Meals made from whatever they could carry, hunt, or salvage. Cooking was done over open flames with whatever fuel they had, often dried cow dung. Their kitchens were chuck wagons loaded with just the essentials. No fridges, no stores, just grit, cast iron pans, and an appetite. These weren't meals crafted for taste or comfort. They were born from pure necessity, shaped by geography, limited supplies, and endless days in the saddle. Food was fuel, and sometimes that fuel came in the form of hard, dry bread, beans soaked for hours, or meat of questionable origin. Today, we're diving into the lost foods of the cowboy era, and some of them are so unexpected, you might be glad they're gone. 1. Hardtack and coffee. Let's start simple. One staple that nearly every cowboy relied on was hardtack, a rock-hard biscuit made from just flour and water. It didn't spoil, it didn't need much storage, and it filled you up. They usually washed it down with black coffee, brewed thick enough to melt a horseshoe. No sugar, no cream, just grit. Some cowboys used the hardtack to scrape their plates. It doubled as both a food and a cleaning tool. Sometimes they'd soften the hardtack by dipping it straight into their coffee. A gritty, steaming brew strong enough to jolt a man awake after sleeping under the stars. 2. Salt pork. When refrigeration didn't exist, salt was a cowboy's best friend. Salt pork was fatty, salty, and tough, but it kept for weeks. They'd fry it up, stew it with beans, or chew on it like jerky. Flavor wasn't the goal, not starving was. Sometimes it came with so much salt crusted on it, you had to boil it just to make it edible. 3. Son of a gun stew. Ready for something a little more intense? This dish included all the parts of a cow most of us would never touch today: liver, heart, kidneys, even brain, all tossed into a pot and boiled into a thick stew. Cowboys believed it gave you strength, maybe because your stomach had to be strong just to keep it down. It was considered a real treat, made fresh after a steer was butchered. 4. Beans and cornbread. Now here's a classic. Pinto beans simmered for hours with bacon or salt pork, usually served with dense cornbread. It was filling, cheap, and easy to make over a campfire. If you've ever eaten cowboy-style baked beans, you know they pack flavor, and maybe a little heat. The cornbread was often made with just cornmeal, salt, water, and a dash of lard. Heavy, plain, and very yellow. Beans were often soaked overnight and then cooked for up to 10 hours over low flames, simmering in cast iron pots seasoned by years of use. Cornbread served as a spoon, a plate, and a napkin all in one. 5. Coffee recycled. Again, cowboys were frugal. They didn't toss out their coffee grounds after one brew. Sometimes they boiled the same grounds 2, 3, even 4 times. If it came out looking like muddy water, that just meant it was ready. A strong brew meant strong men, or at least that's what they told themselves. 6. Rocky Mountain oysters. Think cowboys only ate beefsteaks? Think again. Rocky Mountain oysters, better known as bull testicles, were a real treat for some. Sliced, breaded, and fried up in a pan. Protein-rich, sure. Appetizing? That's up to you. In some camps, they called it prairie tenderloin and swore by its taste. They were surprisingly tender when prepared right, and some claimed they tasted better than steak. Cooked with onions and seasoned with salt, they were served hot off the pan. 7. Game meat and critters. Out on the trail, fresh meat was rare, but when luck struck, they hunted rabbit, squirrel, deer, or even armadillo. And if things got desperate, rattlesnake. Tastes like chicken. Kind of. Some even went for a possum or skunk, cooked low and slow to kill the smell. Hunger makes you creative. 8. Dried apples and prunes. Sweets were few and far between, but dried fruits were prized. They'd carry sacks of dried apples or prunes, often soaked in water or stewed over fire. Not quite dessert, but close enough. Bonus, it kept things moving. Cowboys didn't have time for stomach issues. 9. Cactus and wild onions. Fresh veggies? Forget about it. Cowboys foraged wild onions cactus pads, or prickly pears. It wasn't gourmet, but it added some vitamins and flavor to an otherwise brown and gray diet. The cactus was often charred over fire to remove the spines, then eaten or stewed. Prickly pears were sometimes eaten raw for hydration, while cactus pads could be stewed with salt pork for added flavor. 10. Sourdough everything. Cowboy cooks, or cookies, kept sourdough starters alive for years. They made biscuits, flapjacks, and even bread over campfire grates. Sourdough was reliable, even if it was a little funky. Starters were guarded like treasure, passed down from cook to cook. By the way, if you're enjoying this deep dive into cowboy cuisine, consider subscribing. We've got more forgotten food stories on the way, and trust me, you won't want to miss what our ancestors used to eat. 11. Canned peaches and tomatoes. If a chuck wagon had canned goods, that was luxury. Canned peaches and syrup were pure gold. Cowboys would trade nearly anything for that sweet, sticky bite of civilization. Tomatoes were also prized, sometimes counted as fruit, and used in stews or even as dessert filling. 12. Mystery stews. Every camp had a different recipe, but they all started the same. Take whatever meat you had, toss in beans or cornmeal, and pray for flavor. Sometimes it worked, sometimes not so much. Some included bone marrow for richness or even wild herbs gathered nearby. 13. Grease gravy. Got bacon? Then you've got gravy. Mix the fat with a little flour and water, and you've got cowboy gravy. No milk, no butter, just salty, greasy goodness poured over biscuits. Some called it slop, but when you're starving, slop tastes amazing. Some cookies added bits of crumbled biscuit or salt pork to thicken it up, transforming scraps into a hearty sauce that warmed cold mornings and filled empty bellies. 14. Tobacco and coffee. Again, some cowboys actually chewed tobacco while sipping coffee. Not because it tasted good together, but because that was just life. Grit, smoke, and caffeine. Breakfast of champions. It wasn't unusual to light up while stirring beans. Ashes sometimes made it into the pot. 15. Bone broth and marrow. Cowboys made use of everything. Bones weren't waste. They were boiled into broth or cracked open to suck out the marrow. Rich in nutrients, it kept them going during hard rides and colder nights. 16. Flapjacks. Made from flour, water, sometimes an egg if they had one, and cooked on a griddle over flame. Flapjacks were a welcome change from biscuits. They could be eaten plain, with grease, or, if lucky, with some molasses. If they were really lucky, someone might have a tin of molasses to drizzle on top. Most times, though, grease was the only topping, if anything. 17th trail jerky. Dried beef or buffalo strips were carried in saddlebags. Light, durable, and packed with protein. It was tough as boot leather but kept cowboys fueled. Some smoked it with mesquite wood for flavor. 18. Wild berries. When riding through the mountains, cowboys would occasionally stumble upon berries, blueberries, blackberries, or wild strawberries. They ate them fresh or mashed them into flapjacks. Sometimes they dried the berries in the sun, saving them for later use on long, empty stretches where no fresh forage was possible. 19. Fry bread. A rare treat made with flour, water, salt, and lard. Fried in bacon grease or fat. Crispy on the outside, fluffy inside. Usually reserved for camps near trading posts. Occasionally topped with syrup, dried fruit, or honey for sweetness. Fried bread puffed up beautifully in hot grease, offering a rare bit of comfort food. When fresh, it was golden, crisp, and deeply satisfying. A little reminder of home. 20. Oatmeal when fancy. If a chuck wagon was well stocked, they had oats, cooked into thick porridge with a pinch of salt, no sugar, maybe some dried apple bits if they were lucky. Sometimes spiced with cinnamon if the cookie had extra supplies. When oats were on the menu, it was a sign you were riding with a well-stocked outfit. It warmed your belly in the morning and stuck with you through a long, dusty ride. It's easy to romanticize the cowboy lifestyle, the open sky, the rugged independence, the adventure. But when you look at what they actually ate, suddenly the Old West sounds a lot less glamorous. Still, you've got to respect the toughness it took to live off the land. They didn't have Whole Foods, protein shakes, or drive-thrus. Just a pot, a fire, and a whole lot of grit. It was survival, not dining. But in a strange way, there's beauty in that simplicity. Meals that were earned, not just ordered. Life on the trail wasn't a picnic. It was unpredictable, often harsh, and deeply physical. These foods, though strange by modern standards, were the building blocks of that endurance. And while we might not crave beef liver stew or twice-boiled coffee, there's something admirable about how cowboys made the most out of the little they had. If you enjoyed this journey through forgotten cowboy foods, hit that like button and share it with a friend. And tell us in the comments, which of these meals would you try, and which are you running away from? See you next time.